Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Thursday, March 28th, 2024. It's Season 3, Episode 1 of Ron's Rundown, where we're going to go over every single baseball game every single day, except those doubleheader games. We usually pass on those and hopefully crush the books along the way. If you like what you see, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Put your baseball picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. We got 15 games, a full slate of MLB. Here are the games for opening day. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Patrick Sandoval and Corbin Burnes are the projected starters. You got one of these teams who lost the best player in baseball in the offseason, Shohei Ohtani, going to the Dodgers. And then you got the other team, the Orioles. They get an ace in the offseason, probably their best starting pitcher in the rotation right now, in Corbin Burnes, who won a Cy Young a couple of years ago. So you got two teams probably going in different directions, honestly. Now, the Angels, though, they're a franchise that when we've expected big things from them, they have pretty much failed to meet any of those expectations in recent years, at least. And now the expectations are pretty low, so maybe this is the season where we see the Angels make the postseason. And it's been an Angels team that's had the best player in baseball on its roster for the last decade plus, because when it wasn't Ohtani, it was Mike Trout, and you can make the argument that either one of those guys is the best player in baseball. So this season, there's some question marks in the lineup, in the rotation, in the bullpen, as there usually is with this team. It was a bullpen that struggled quite a bit last year and in recent years in general. And you got Patrick Sandoval, who did not have his best spring training this season. He ended the month of March particularly. He pitched well in his first game in February, but in March he had 3 outings, 9 1/3 innings, 6 walks, 2 home runs, 16 base hits, and 12 runs. 9 of those were earned, so an 8.68 ERA in that month of March. Not in great form going into this game, in a tough spot to play, in Camden Yards, and a really tough lineup, a young lineup in the Baltimore Orioles. But on the other side, Corbin Burnes also did not fare too well in spring training. Don't have a lot of faith in his game right now either. When you look, the thing that concerns me the most is his strikeout numbers weren't the sharpest in those spring performances. And in the month of March, he had 13 1/3 innings, 8 strikeouts, and a 6.08 ERA. It's only 8 Ks in 13 innings. You had those 4 home runs. His control was there. He only walked 1 batter, but to me, there's value on the over in this game, because I think both of these bullpens, even though the Orioles bullpen's been pretty good the last couple of years, I still have my concerns with them on paper. And the Angels bullpen, we know, has really struggled quite a bit. So with 2 starting pitchers that aren't in great form, 2 solid lineups, and 2 bullpens that I'm kind of on the fence about, I got to go with the over in this Angels-Orioles ballgame. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Chicago White Sox. This one's going to be between Tarik Skubal and Garrett Crochet as the projected starters. A lot of people thinking the Tigers could make a run at making the postseason or winning the AL Central, because this has been a division that's been kind of wide open in recent years. I mean, only 87 wins were necessary to win the division last year, and that was the Minnesota Twins. But the Tigers had 78 wins. It actually wasn't that bad of a season for Detroit, even though it's been disappointing years in recent years. But Tarik Skubal, a guy like him, he didn't pitch all season last year. When he did, though, he was really sharp, one of the better pitchers in the American League, and he had a great spring training. He's a guy that keeps the ball on the ground. He earns those strikeouts. His control's there. He is a dark horse for me to win the AL Cy Young. I think if he pitches the whole season, gets away from the injury bug, he could really be one of the better pitchers in this league. But on the other side, Garrett Crochet, he pretty much earned this starting job on opening day, as he went 12 2/3 in spring training with 14 Ks, only 1 walk, and a 2.13 ERA. He pitched really well. He's a lefty as well, as both lefties in this matchup, but he's a guy that can hit triple digits on his fastball. He hit 101, I think, in his MLB debut a couple of years ago. And I think early on, this game's probably going to be pretty low scoring. But the thing with Crochet, he's more so than Skubal, in my opinion, a guy that's not going to go deep in this ball game. Maybe 3-4 innings. He's not really somebody that's had a lot of starting pitching experience. So then you have the Chicago White Sox bullpen, and we know that bullpen has been really struggling the last couple of years. I don't think this year's going to be any different. When you look at that bullpen on paper, you look at the projected WAR, it's near the bottom of the league going into the season. Meanwhile, the Tigers bullpen, I think, is much better. So there's a reason why Detroit's a big favorite in this game. I think it's going to be close game early, low scoring game early on, but I think the Tigers pull away at the end. Give me the Tigers on the run line, land the 1.5 runs on the road. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Kansas City Royals. We're going to see Pablo Lopez and Cole Reagans on the mound in this one. Like I said, a lot of people talking about the Tigers as a potential dark horse in the American League and the AL Central, but I think the Royals are another team you want to watch out for this year. This was a team, I think, had a really good offseason. It's a team that pretty much knows its farm system is not the best right now. its prospects are pretty much all up. Bobby Witt Jr., guys like that, the young players, they're all on on the major league rosters. So the time is now to start competing, and they went out and got some veteran help. They got some starting pitching help, some bullpen help, and also Hunter Renfroe. This was a team that was very busy in the offseason. And I think that they're going to be pretty sharp this year. There's a team that hit the ball very hard offensively against righties, against lefties. The sabermetrics were pretty kind to the Royals. They were a bit unlucky at times, but in the second half of the season, they started to win some ball games, especially, getting really good prices we got with them in those second half games. And starting pitcher like Cole Reagans, while he didn't have a very good spring training this year, he was excellent in the second half of the season. Last year, he was one of the better pitchers in the American League, honestly. Great strikeout numbers, kept the ball on the ground. The control's always a concern. That's why he struggled quite a bit in spring. His control was off, but I still think he puts together a strong campaign. Pablo Lopez is a really good starting pitching option. The Twins have a good bullpen, but to me, the value lies with the home team here. I think this is going to be a Royals team you want to watch out for this season, especially early on when we can get those good prices. I mean, you got to think about it. The prices we were getting with the Rangers and the Diamondbacks, teams that were, not really expected to do much last year going into the season, the prices we were getting with them at the beginning of the year compared to at the end of the season when they were in the World Series were a lot different. Teams like the Royals, Tigers, I think there's going to be the same thing this season. So give me the Royals in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Houston Astros, probably one of the more anticipated games on the board. Nestor Cortez and Framber Valdez, a pair of lefties on the mound in this one. Now, with Garrett Cole out for at least the first month for the New York Yankees, potentially more, they need a guy like Nestor Cortez or at least Carlos Rodon to bounce back from a really rough 2023 campaign. The Yankees had a winning record last year, but barely. It was a disappointing season for the Bombers. You bring in Juan Soto, you bring in Marcus Stroman. You do lose quite a few pieces, though, in the bullpen and the lineup alike. But the Yankees have a lot of expectations, as they usually do, going into this year. I'm just a little bit concerned with Nestor Cortez. I mean, this is a really good Astros lineup. They were great against lefties last year. They've been great against lefties the last few years. And I think Nestor Cortez, his struggles in spring, we saw his last two games in spring training against the Twins and Braves. He went 7 1/3 combined, 15 base hits, 9 earned runs, 2 home runs. He had 3 walks. He had 9 strikeouts. We know Cortez is always going to be able to miss some bats, but he gives us those sharp contact hits, and I worry about him here. But I also worry about Framber Valdez, who did not pitch against the Yankees last year, but has not pitched well against the Yankees in his career. He also struggled quite a bit in spring training. The Yankees were also a lineup that hit lefties pretty well last year. And to me, I worry about both of these bullpens. I think the Yankees bullpen has a lot more question marks going into the year. I think we're going to see a high-scoring game here. It's one of the higher totals on the board for a reason. Give me the over in Yankees-Astros. Next up, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Miami Marlins. This one, Jesus Luzardo and Mitch Keller as the starters. Both of these teams, pretty tough to get a read on going into 2024, but I will say I'm a little bit concerned. I would say, good amount concerned with the Miami Marlins going into this season because this was a team that, last year kind of had everything going well for it. It won a lot of those one-run games. I think it had one of the best records in baseball in one-run games. You had the batting crown winner in Luis Arraez, who hit, 340 plus last season. It's tough to replicate those kind of numbers while, Arraez is still going to be a great hitter this season, while the Marlins could very well be good in one-run games again. This is still a team I have my question marks with. I like their trade deadline last year. They brought in some guys that only can help them last season, but also this year, guys like Jake Berger and Josh Bell. But I still think the lineup's pretty weak. The bullpen I have my concerns with, and Jesus Luzardo was not great in spring training. So to me, while Mitch Keller also struggled quite a bit in spring, he did end the spring with a really good outing. And, I'd like to see that at least going into the regular season. He pitched against the Detroit Tigers, went 4 innings of shutout baseball with 3 strikeouts and only 1 walk, no home runs, of course. So it was a good outing from there. And I think he pitches well enough here to get this win for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Again, a really good price with Pittsburgh, a team that's kind of under the radar right now. Another team that could be a spoiler in the NL Central. But I'm going to go with Pittsburgh in this opening day game on the money line. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the San Diego Padres. Logan Webb and Yu Darvish are your starters. Yu Darvish, I tend not to take him too often at the beginning of seasons. To me, he's somebody that needs a few starts to get going, kind of like a guy like Blake Snell, a former Padre. And while he pitched pretty well in that game against the Dodgers in South Korea, 3 2/3 innings, 3 strikeouts, he still had 3 walks, gave up an unearned run, and he wasn't able to go more than 3 2/3 innings, so his pitch count was up there pretty early. I think the Giants can get to him for a few runs early on in this game. They were able to do so last year against Yu Darvish, and Logan Webb pitched well against the Padres last year. He had, I think, a complete game against them, and while he didn't have his best spring, I think he'll be fine this season. I think he's going to be one of the better pitchers in the National League and potential dark horse again for a Cy Young win. and he's a guy that keeps the ball on the ground. He can earn some strikeouts here and there, but he limits the walks, limits the home runs, and I think he pitches well here. So I'm going to go with the San Francisco Giants, get him at a pretty good price on the road. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Miles Mikolas and Tyler Glasnow are your projected starters. We see the Dodgers as one of the biggest favorites on the board in this game. We're going to get used to that. We're going to see the Dodgers as a huge favorite most of the season. They were already one of the more public favorite teams in baseball, but you add in Shohei Ohtani and Tyler Glasnow and some other big-name players, you're going to see the Dodgers minus 300, 400, maybe even 500 in certain games against some of the weaker teams in baseball. And this is one of those spots where minus 240 is just not in my wheelhouse against a Cardinals team that is expected to do a lot better this year than they did last year. Miles Mikolas pitched well against the Dodgers last year. He's not my favorite starting pitching option. He's not my least favorite either. And I think the Cardinals have some decent pieces. Like I said, in the lineup, I think we're going to see guys really bounce back from a pretty tough 2023, guys like Nolan Arenado. And the bullpen's also got some nice arms towards the tail end of the bullpen as well. I think that the Cardinals, I think there's value with St. Louis. The Dodgers are certainly the better team. The Dodgers are going to go on to win probably 100 games this year. But we can't take them at these minus 240, minus 250 prices all season long. We'll go broke. So I'm going to go with St. Louis Cardinals here, plus the 1.5 runs with a sprinkle on the money line in this game. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Zach Eflin and Jose Barrios are the projected starters. Both starting pitchers last year pitched well against the opposition. Zach Eflin didn't have the best spring training, but he pitched well towards the end of spring training, so that's a good sign to see. I think he pitches well in this game. He pitched really well in Tropicana Field last year. He's one of the better home pitchers in baseball. Jose Barrios, I also think, is an underrated arm. We've seen him have some ups and downs in his career, especially when he moved to Toronto, but last season finished with 3.65 ERA. He was 25th in strikeouts, 1.19 whip is pretty solid as well. And I think we're going to see a lower scoring game, especially in the beginning of this one. When the bullpens come in, we'll have to see. I think the Rays have the advantage, but I'm going to go with the under in the first 5 innings. I think both starting pitchers pitch well, and then the bullpens take over. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Josiah Gray and Frankie Montas are your projected starters. The Reds are a big favorite in this ballgame, but I think the Nationals are another team that we're going to get some value on this season. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know if they'll get 75 plus wins, but I do think we're going to get a lot of plus money prices similar to this one where Josiah Gray's on the mound. He's pitched pretty well on the road in his career, even though this is at Great American Ballpark, which is not a great ballpark to pitch at if you're if you're a pitcher that gives up quite a few home runs. But I still think Gray is actually the better starting pitching option in this game. I think the Reds have the better lineup and bullpen, but Frankie Montas, somebody that I do not want to lay this kind of price with early on. His first game with his new team, he struggled quite a bit, notably quite a bit with the New York Yankees. He had injury problems as well, so this is his first start back in a while. I can't get there with the Reds at this kind of price. They're a good home team. They're a team who's going to be competitive in the National League this season, but to me, the Nationals are improving. They have a nice young lineup. They played pretty well in the second half, and I'm going to go with them at the plus money price on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the Texas Rangers. This one's going to be a 7:35 Eastern start time on ESPN, the lone ESPN game for the opening day card. And we're going to see Justin Steele and Nathan Eovaldi as the projected starters. This is a Rangers team, obviously the defending World Series champions, that have a crazy good lineup. Last year's team was basically, we're going to score more runs than you. The pitching staff's not going to be the sharpest at all times. Starting rotation, same thing. But we're going to score a ton of runs. They were one of the best offenses in baseball last year. They should be so yet again this year as they add in Wyatt Langford, one of the best players in spring training this season. So an already good lineup got a lot better. And they're going to be a great team offensively yet again this year. But the pitching staff, I still have my concerns with it, starting rotation and bullpen alike. And, this is a Chicago Cubs team. It's also, I think, a lot of people looking at it for a potential division win in the NL Central. Like I said, wide open division. And Justin Steele, somebody that was one of the better starting pitchers in the National League last year, a guy that keeps the ball on the ground, but's added some more strikeouts to his repertoire. And I think it's going to be one of the better pitchers in this division yet again in 2024. I think there's value with Chicago. It's going to be an emotional game for the Rangers. Their first game back from the World Series championship, a little bit of hangover. I'm going to take the Chicago Cubs on the money line. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Oakland Athletics. We're going to see Shane Bieber and Alex Wood on the mound in this one. Shane Bieber was a starting pitcher that we faded quite a bit last year, and it was because his strikeout numbers and velocity went down quite a bit from where we saw him in the beginning of his career when he was one of the best pitchers in the American League. And he still finished the season with decent numbers, but just not ace-level numbers, where he was 6-6 with a 3.8 ERA, 1.21 whip, I believe. And like I said, those strikeout numbers were pedestrian. So, to me, there's value fading those types of pitchers when you see prices like this. on the road. I know it's the Oakland Athletics. They're one of the worst teams in baseball last year in the last couple of years. But you see, Bieber laying this kind of price. He's probably not going to go more than 5 innings. So we're going to see both of these teams use the bullpen quite a bit. The Guardians bullpen, I don't think it's as strong as it was a couple of years ago when we saw, the dominance of Karinchak and Clase. And to me, Alex Wood, the guy that's fighting for that starting job at the top of the rotation, he's somebody that pitched pretty well in spring training, at a solid regular season last year. He's not one of the best aces in baseball, but he's a decent option for the Oakland A's. He went 14 in the third innings with 17 strikeouts in spring, only had 2 walks. And while he gave up 4 home runs, I still think he's a decent option in this game. I think the Oakland Athletics are going to be a little bit improved this season. Not a ton. I still think they missed the playoffs by a good margin, but I think we're going to get a really good price with Oakland at home in certain spots. This is one of them. Give me the A's on the money line. Next up, it's the Boston Red Sox taking on the Seattle Mariners. We're going to see Brian Bayo and Luis Castillo as the projected starters. I like both of these starting pitching options in this game. To me, it comes down to the bullpens. I think the Red Sox bullpen, one of the weaker ones on paper going into the season in the American League. I also think their lineup is not as strong as where we've seen it in recent years. And I think the Mariners are a team to watch out for. We hear about obviously the Texas Rangers, the defending World Series champions, the Houston Astros, who have been one of the top teams in the American League the last decade plus. But the Mariners have a really solid pitching staff. I think their lineup's going to be improved this year. We know their bullpen is super strong. They're a team that I could see certainly win this division and maybe make a nice postseason run. It's a franchise that's been dying for a run like that for quite a while. And, we've seen the signs. Castillo's one of the best pitchers in the league. I think he pitches well in this game. I think the Mariners grabbed the win and the run line covered. So give me the Mariners. I'm going to lay the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. This is the final game for the Thursday card of Major League Baseball. Kyle Freeland and Zach Gallen are the projected starters. Diamondbacks a huge favorite in this ball game. It makes sense. This is a team that went to the World Series last year. You got Zach Gallen on the mound, who was one of the better pitchers in baseball last year. And, this is a Rockies team that we know not only has struggled overall, but especially on the road. They have one of the worst road records in the last 10 years plus. It makes sense. When this team plays at Coors Field and the altitude has to go on a road trip, it is really tough on the position players and the pitchers to adjust to that. But this is opening day. They haven't played at Coors Field in spring training. So I don't think this is going to be a spot where the Rockies are just an easy fade on the road, especially when you look at the fact that Zach Gallen did not pitch too well in spring training. Actually, he kind of had a rough spring training. 13 innings. He gave up 16 base hits. 9 total runs, 8 of those were earned, so a 5.54 ERA. The big concern for me, only 9 strikeouts in 13 innings and 7 walks to go with it. Only 1 home run, so he's keeping the ball on the ground, but the control was way off for Zach Gallen. We saw him struggle a little bit early on in the season last year. He got going as the season went on, but there's just no way I can lay this kind of price to the Diamondbacks. I think this is a team that's going to step back a little bit this season. It's kind of easy to say that because they went all the way to the World Series last year, so anything less than a World Series appearance would be less than last year, but I wouldn't be shocked to see this team miss the postseason. I just don't think that this team can replicate the big wins that it had in certain spots last year. And this is a price I cannot go anywhere near with the Diamondbacks here. So give me the Rockies plus the 1.5 runs with a sprinkle on the money line. Freeland was actually one of the starting pitchers that pitched better at Coors Field than on the road last year, but I think he's good enough to keep the Rockies in it. Give me the 1.5 runs. And that's it. Those are the games for opening day in Major League Baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Let's make this a great MLB season together. Good luck.